Welcome to another day slash evening of 31 animals in 31 days. If you want to see how I created this humpback whale mother and calf pair, you can check out this video in the cards that is from yesterday. And of course, if you're here because you like painting, like watching painting and learning about it, hit that subscribe, like, and notification bell button, and I would really appreciate it as a small budding channel for 2022 goals. Today we are actually going to be painting a snail. So popularly voted on. It was actually very close, and there was a revote that happened on social media, on Instagram, and on Twitter to finally bring out snails as the winner. So we're gonna go get started on it. This painting is going to be really fun because not only do we have all of the great texture in the lines of the shell, but the whole body of the snail is also very textured and very wet. So we're going to go over a lot of tips and tricks to how to create this. As well, we're going to get a really macro shot on wood and how to create kind of a wood grain texture as well as a little bit of a bonus texture that you find in nature demonstration. So I'm really excited to paint this painting. Quick, before we start, I have painted the background off camera. I did it for the last 4 paintings as I was trying to catch up a little bit, and I did manage to catch up 1 full day. So now we're only 2 days behind in our 31 animal in 31 days challenge. So basically what I wanted to achieve with this background is like a really bokeh faded background leaf effect. So we have this soft green color and it kind of fades to black in a few different areas, and we try to keep this as random and sporadic as possible. It's nothing like what the photo background actually looks like, but I think it's going to create some really sharp contrast and create a really striking difference with the colors in the snails. So we're going to go see how it turns out. So this painting I actually started on the day I got my COVID booster. And I started not to feel that great towards the end of the day, and I was pretty tired and painting very slowly. So this time lapse is going to be a little longer at the beginning, and then it'll pick up towards the middle and the end when I'm feeling a little bit better. But anyway, yeah, go get vaccinated, guys. It's a great thing to do. It protects everybody. I basically spent way too long, fussing is the only word I have for it, with this piece of wood that's not even supposed to be the focus. And I didn't even paint more of the snail during this evening session. So anyway, it started out fine. I got some of the green details that I wanted in here. I wanted to have the wood be a bit more of a green color so that it helps fade in with the background, and so that the snail would really pop against it in the warmer kind of color tones, kind of like the orange and green contrast. But anyway, I was using a couple different brushes to try and build up the texture of the wood. And I did it with small brush strokes that you can kind of see. So I'm using my splayed brush. It's an older brush I paint with quite often to get a bunch of different lines. And I'm doing that in black, in white, in green, trying to just build up those different layers that I do with my transparent paint. And I was also playing around with the top. I knew the front edge, I wanted it to be a lot brighter, and then the back to kind of really fade into the green of the background as well. And you just watch me repaint it over and over again, because you know, if stuff's not working out the way you want it, you just paint over it, then that's fine. And yeah, and then I've added more texture to it in sporadic areas just to try and create a bit more variation. You see I repaint some of those lines and the grooves that I had in it to try and add some more texture to the wood surface. I wanted it to be pretty uneven when wood's this close up. This is a very, very zoomed in shot of this wood beam. And then I'm kind of knocking back some of those little lights. And the wood's wet, so there's a bit of a glisten, like a shine to it, which is one of the main reasons why I wanted these kind of more sporadic white dots that are kind of catching the light. So this is actually 2 days later, which is crazy. I was painting the snail. I started in the evening after finishing the whales, and then we had gotten our COVID booster shot, my husband and I, the afternoon before that, and I started not feeling that great. I was pretty groggy, like feeling pretty tired. So we just went home and went to bed, and then the wood, I was frustrated with it too. This is the final wood that we ended up with, and now we are on to the snail finally. So yeah, and then the next day I had to varnish the tiger painting, our day one, and I decided just to varnish and photograph all the other paintings and put prints of them on my website and get them to the gallery show. So the tiger is in for a Year of the Tiger Lunar New Year's show that's starting, I think, in a few days still, but I had to drop off that painting. So I took a day, did all those errands, you know, drafted my email newsletter, which I need to actually send out, I should remember, and did a lot of the other art business things that you gotta do. You just gotta do it. So yeah, so we took a day and caught up on everything, caught up on emails, all this other stuff, and it was a nice like low-key planning day to organize some animals and photos of animals that we have going on as well. So anyway, back to the painting. I am working on the antennas. I really wanted to try and create the transparent effect of them. So that's kind of why you see it darker in the middle and then lighter towards the outside. It kind of gives like a translucent appearance, and the bottom edge of them is yellow, and then the top edge has this beautiful texture I did in white, and the actual like eyeballs at the end of the snail. I don't have the language to describe snails, but anyway, they were really fun to paint, and it looks like it's a really dark pupil, but it's actually blue. It's a very bright blue as well. And then I just started playing around with trying to build up the texture of the snail. It's so funny. These animals have such a gorgeous pattern, and I had so much fun painting this. It's kind of similar to the dilemma I ran into with the scales, where there's all these subtle patterns and ridges that kind of run through all of this texture. That was a little interesting to do, but what was different here is that it was so irregular in shape. It was a lot more fun to try and paint and make up part of it as I went, and it was really great. So I'm just kind of starting darker and then moving whiter, and then you're gonna see at various times throughout the painting I knock it all back with a wash of color to try and add that color. And at the end, because I wanted to make sure that the color of the body matched the shell, I actually leave the whole body looking fairly white. And then I go back and I do a final wash of color and a final highlight on a couple of the areas with white at the very last step. So this part was so fun to do, and I really enjoyed it and building up that texture. And it looks so cool in person, like stepping back a bit. Yeah, and adding that green color in to kind of get the reflection from the bottom of, you know, the earth and the other plants that are in the image was just such a cool effect of the photograph that I wanted to capture as well. And it's funny because it's such a big green color. It's such a bright green. It's like almost lime green. Yeah, you just wouldn't think. But I mean, it's these animals are just so fascinating, like how their texture works. I don't know. I'd never painted anything like this. Snails are definitely really cool. Mollusks in general are just such a cool group of animals. And I also wanted to make sure that the body of the snail, of these dots and the texture, got a lot more faded off as we go back into its body. So I'm kind of doing a wash behind it. Oh, we got to add the shadow. Kind of doing a wash over the area before I paint the texture on, just to try and get the colors to match a little bit more to what the darkest shade is that I'm seeing. And one important feature I really wanted to get was the kind of undulation of its body as it's moving. So I wanted to make sure we saw that kind of wave pattern to the body of the snail as it's kind of crawling along. They just have such fascinating muscles and movement. They're just such a cool animal. So you can see there's a lot less contrast, which helps knock things into the background. And there's a lot, just less variation in color in general. And I also use cooler colors towards the background. That gets more apparent when we do our final wash of the snail color. And I also knock the top back edge with a darker green, kind of rounding out the snail. Kind of the head gets the lighter green because it's closer as it's wrapping around the wood, and then the back gets the more dark green reflection. Yeah, so here we're doing one initial kind of wash of the color to try and warm up the snail's body a little bit. And it really makes the antennas stand out as how transparent they are, because they're more of a blue-ish color.
which I think is super fun. And with these dots in its body, I'm not highlighting everywhere. I'm highlighting selective places, so it's not one gradient of dots. Yeah, you can see I've added that kind of green color in the top body, and I made a mistake there where my hand had smudged a bit of white, so I just covered that up with a dark green. Tried to color match it. Okay, and now we are onto the shell. The shell was so fun to paint. I mean, textures like this, I used to be really nervous of this kind of texture in nature. It would just take so much color mixing and color matching, and it, you know, transparent paint is just, it's great. It's just so great. I think I'm gonna do a highlight reel of how different ways that you can use transparent paint, and I'll pull clips from all of these different time lapses that I've done of this past month, because it's such great footage to demonstrate the plentiful uses that you can use for it. So I've done all the details in white, and then I'm kind of just going through and really roughly adding what the main color is I'm seeing, whether it's yellow, green, red, blue, like all the colors of the rainbow are in this shell, especially because we have this really nice kind of glare on the front shell that I end up adding quite a bit of blue to help really get the three-dimensional look. And the part where how this looks 3D is in part the shape, the curve, and the texture of it helps give that 3D effect. And then different things you can do to the edges as well also help kind of soften that to be a three-dimensional shape. So here you can see I'm adding in all that lovely blue, kind of like a sky blue, as if the sky is peeking through and bouncing off of it. And it also helps kind of add some contrast to the shell. And it's basically, I'm just rotating using different colors that I see here. I'm using green to kind of get the top edge of the shell and around the edges, which will help it kind of fade back into the background so that we have the brightest orange colors that are closest to you. And then green's a bit of a cooler color. And I'm just rotating, adding these details in white lines and then knocking it back with color. And these different layers that you see of pigment and of highlights and texture really help create the overall effect. And now I'm going in with a highlighting brush, just the brightest areas, adding pure white at this stage. I haven't used pure white yet, so I really save it for the final area where I want to be the absolute brightest. I never paint with pure white throughout the painting. I always just do it at the very end. And in my classic, to try and make things look like wet or shiny, I add little dots. Dots are such a great way to add light. Oh, we're not there yet. First, I paint the inside of the shell. Yes, I almost entirely forgot this area. In talking about it, not in painting it. It was really bothering me through the painting. This took a long time to blend because it was, I don't know, I did it once and I was really happy with the blending that I achieved and like the gradient, and it was too bright. It didn't look faded back enough. So I completely knocked it back with color, as you can see here. And then I had to refix my blending because it's, I don't know. When you knock things back with transparent paint, it doesn't quite look as smooth. So yeah, okay, so now we're adding the dots for the highlights, and that just helps give the shell more texture. And even though it's mostly the longitudinal ridges, there are other ridges as you know, there's just such a pattern of the shell. So these dots kind of catching on different elements of it help give the shell even more texture. And that's the end of the time lapse.
I hope that you have enjoyed watching me paint a snail. It was super fun getting their texture down and their shell and trying to make it look shiny. And I had a lot of fun painting this one, so I hope you did too. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe button. If you want to check out the other videos in my 31 Animals in 31 Days challenge, you can check out the playlist down there. And we'll see you tomorrow, and we're gonna paint a swordfish.